I lay in our bed pretending to sleep, my breathing slow and even, my body perfectly still. And I listened to my husband Jason Moretti confess something to his underboss that made my blood run cold, something he thought I would never hear, something he believed was safe to say because I had taken my sleeping pill an hour ago, and he was certain I was unconscious. What you're about to hear will leave you absolutely speechless. Kindly hit the subscribe button and let me know where you are watching from. Stay with me because the final twist is unexpected, something nobody could have predicted, not even Jason himself. And never speak freely in front of someone you have dismissed as insignificant. The truth is, I had not taken the sleeping pill. I had pretended to swallow it like I pretended every night for the past 2 weeks. Ever since I started noticing that Jason seemed relieved when I took it, seemed to relax once I was medicated into unconsciousness, seemed to wait for the moment when he knew I could not hear him before he made certain phone calls, had certain conversations, conducted certain business that he needed me to be unaware of, and that pattern, that consistent pattern of waiting for me to be asleep, made me suspicious, made me careful, made me start palming the pill instead of swallowing it, hiding it under my tongue, spitting it out once Jason left the bedroom, staying awake and alert while he thought I was drugged into oblivion. It was 11:40 at night when his phone rang, the sound muffled because he had it on vibrate, and I felt him reach for it carefully, felt him check the screen, felt him slide out of bed with the kind of deliberate quiet that confirmed this call was expected, was important, was something that required privacy, and I kept my breathing steady, kept my eyes closed, kept my body relaxed even though every nerve was suddenly screaming with attention, with awareness, with the certainty that I was about to hear something significant. "Terry," Jason said quietly as he moved toward our bedroom door, his voice barely audible, and I recognized the name Terry Richardson, Jason's underboss, his closest friend, the man who had stood beside him at our wedding 3 years ago, the man who knew all of Jason's secrets. And I heard the bedroom door open and close as Jason stepped into the hallway, heard his footsteps move down the hall toward his study, and I knew I had maybe 30 seconds to position myself somewhere I could hear without being discovered. I got out of bed silently, moved across the floor on bare feet, no sound, no creaking boards, nothing to alert Jason that his wife was awake and following him, and I positioned myself in the hallway bathroom that was adjacent to his study, left the door open just a crack, just enough that sound would carry, just enough that I could hear everything without being visible, and I waited, I held my breath, and I listened. "It has been 3 years, Jason said, his voice carrying through the quiet house. 3 years of this. 3 years of lying to her every single day. 3 years of pretending to be someone I am not. 3 years of playing the role of devoted husband when the entire foundation of our marriage is, when everything about us is, Terry, I cannot do this anymore. I cannot keep living this lie." "You do not have a choice," Terry's voice came through the phone. Slightly distorted but clear enough. "You made a commitment, you gave your word, you agreed to this, and backing out now, after 3 years. That is not an option. That creates problems we cannot solve, problems that affect more than just you." "I know," Jason said, and his voice was strained, exhausted, breaking under the weight of whatever he was carrying. "I know what I agreed to. I know what the consequences are. But Terry, I am in love with her. I fell in love with her, and that was never supposed to happen. That was never part of the plan. I was supposed to marry her, monitor her, keep her close, keep her controlled, keep her from discovering what her father did. But I was not supposed to actually love her, and now I do, and I do not know how to reconcile that with what I am doing, with the lie I am living, with the fact that every moment we spend together is based on deception." I felt the floor disappear beneath my feet, felt my stomach drop, felt reality shift in a way that made me grab the door frame to stay upright, because Jason was saying our marriage was a lie, was saying he married me for reasons that had nothing to do with love, was saying something about my father, about keeping me from discovering something, and I did not understand, could not process, could only listen as my husband destroyed everything I thought was real. What her father did, I thought. What did my father do? My father, Harrison Chen, who died 2 years before I met Jason. My father, who was a respected businessman, who owned import-export companies, who left me a substantial inheritance, who I loved and mourned and missed every single day. What could my father have possibly done that required Jason to marry me as some kind of monitoring operation? "Your father," Jason said, and I could hear him pacing now, could hear the sound of his footsteps on the hardwood floor of his study, could picture him moving back and forth the way he did when he was agitated. Your father stole from us, from the Moretti family. He used his import business as a front to move our shipments, and he skimmed, Charlotte. He skimmed millions of dollars over the course of 10 years, and by the time we figured it out, by the time we traced the missing money back to him, he was dead, and the money was. We could not find it, could not trace where it went, could not recover what he took, and my father said we needed to get it back, needed to find out where Harrison hid it, needed someone on the inside who could search, who could monitor, who could get close to the daughter because we suspected Harrison told her something, left her some kind of information, some kind of access to the accounts where he hid our money. So you married me, I thought. You married me to find money my father allegedly stole. You married me as an investigation, as surveillance, as a way to get close enough to search my life for evidence of crimes I knew nothing about. I married you, Jason said into the phone. I married you because my father ordered me to. Because Kenny Moretti does not accept failure, does not accept losing millions of dollars, does not accept that some civilian businessman outsmarted us. And he said, marry the daughter, get close to her, search her life, find the money, recover what was taken. And I did. I followed orders. I courted you. I made you fall in love with me. I proposed. I married you. And I have spent 3 years searching your files, searching your accounts, searching every document your father left you. And Terry, I have found nothing. No hidden accounts, no offshore money, no evidence that Charlotte knows anything about what her father did. And I am starting to believe that maybe she really does not know. Maybe Harrison never told her. Maybe he took the location of that money to his grave, and Charlotte is exactly what she appears to be, an innocent woman who has no idea her father was a thief. Then you have a problem, Terry said, because Kenny is not going to accept that answer. Kenny does not believe in coincidences, does not believe that Charlotte knows nothing. He thinks she is playing you, thinks she is smarter than she looks, thinks the innocent act is a performance, and eventually she will lead you to the money. So he is going to want you to keep looking, keep monitoring, keep the marriage going until you find what you are looking for. But what if there is nothing to find? Jason asked. What if Charlotte really is innocent? What if I have spent 3 years lying to a woman who has done nothing wrong, who is a victim of her father's crimes just like we are? What if I am destroying an innocent person for money that might not even exist anymore? Where are you watching from right now? Are you understanding what she is hearing, that her entire marriage was a setup? That the man she loves married her under false pretenses? Hit subscribe because this story is about to get much darker. Because what you think you know is not even half of the truth. Then you made a mistake, Terry said, his voice hard. You made a mistake falling in love with her. You made a mistake letting emotions interfere with your assignment. You made a mistake thinking this was ever going to end any way other than badly. And now you need to decide. You need to choose. You need to figure out whether you are Jason Moretti, son of Kenny Moretti, loyal to the family, or whether you are Jason the husband, Jason who loves Charlotte, Jason who wants out, because you cannot be both. Those two identities cannot coexist, and the longer you try to be both, the worse this is going to get. I do not know how to choose, Jason said, and his voice was breaking now. Was the sound of a man being torn apart, because choosing the family means losing Charlotte, means continuing to lie to her, means using her until we find the money, or until my father decides she is not useful anymore. And I cannot, Terry, I cannot do that to her. I love her too much, but choosing Charlotte means betraying my father, means walking away from the family, means consequences I cannot even imagine, means possibly putting Charlotte in danger, because if I leave, if I tell her the truth, my father might. He might decide she is a liability, might decide that if he cannot get the money through me, he will get it another way. You are right to be afraid, Terry said, because Kenny does not accept betrayal. And choosing Charlotte over the family, that is betrayal, that is choosing an outsider over blood, that is something Kenny will never forgive. So you need to think very carefully about what you are considering, about what it would cost, about whether Charlotte is worth what you would lose, what you would risk, what might happen if Kenny decides you are no longer reliable. She is worth everything, Jason said, and I could hear the conviction in his voice, could hear that he meant it, could hear that whatever lies our marriage was built on, his love for me now was real, was genuine, was something that had grown despite the deception, despite the manipulation, despite everything. But I do not know how to protect her, do not know how to get us both out of this safely, do not know how to tell her the truth without destroying her, without making her hate me, without losing everything we have built even though it was built on lies. I stood in that hallway bathroom listening to my husband confess that our marriage was a setup, that he was ordered to marry me, that everything I thought was real was a carefully constructed investigation, and I felt something inside me that had been soft become hard, something that had been trusting become calculating, something that had been loving become strategic, because I understood now, understood that I was not safe, understood that I was married to a man who loved me but was still lying to me, still using me, still searching for money I did not have, money I knew nothing about, money that my father apparently stole and hid and never told me about. I backed away from the bathroom, moved silently back to our bedroom, got into bed, arranged my body in the position of sleep, and I lay there in the dark processing everything I had heard, everything I had learned, everything that had just shattered my understanding of my own life, and I made decisions, cold strategic decisions about what I needed to do next, how I needed to protect myself, how I needed to figure out if what Jason said about my father was true, and if it was true, where the money was. Because if Jason's family thought I had access to stolen money, if they thought I was hiding something, I was in danger, real danger, and the only way to protect myself was to find the truth. I did not sleep that night, lay awake until Jason came back to bed, until he settled beside me thinking I was unconscious, until his breathing evened out into sleep, and then I lay there longer, planning, thinking, trying to remember anything my father might have said, any clue he might have left, any indication that he was involved in something illegal, and I came up with nothing. No memories of suspicious behavior, no odd conversations, no warning signs that my father was anything other than what he appeared to be, a successful businessman who loved his daughter. My father, Harrison Chen, had died of a heart attack 2 years before I met Jason. Sudden, unexpected, devastating. I was 24 and suddenly orphaned, my mother having died when I was a child, and my father had been my world, my anchor, the person who taught me everything I knew about business, about integrity, about treating people with respect, and learning that he had been stealing, had been involved with organized crime, had been living a double life, that shattered something fundamental in my understanding of who he was, who I was, what my life had been built on. But I could not afford to grieve that loss yet, could not afford to process the betrayal of discovering my father was not who I thought he was, because I needed to focus on survival, needed to understand what I was dealing with, needed to figure out if Jason was telling the truth about the $12 million, and if he was, where that money was, because if the Moretti family thought I had it, if they thought I was hiding it, I was in real danger, the kind of danger that did not end with divorce, that ended with the kind of disappearance people whispered about but never solved. But the next morning I started investigating, started going through my father's papers more carefully than I had when he died, started looking at his business records not as mementos but as potential evidence, started searching for patterns, for anomalies, for anything that suggested money was moving in ways it should not have been moving, and I did it quietly, carefully, while Jason was at work, while he thought I was just at home being the devoted wife, being the woman he was monitoring, being the person he thought was too innocent to suspect anything. I went through boxes I had not opened since my father died, boxes of financial records, of business contracts, of correspondence, and I read everything, really read it, looking for references to the Moretti family, looking for transactions that seemed unusual, looking for any indication that my father was involved in something beyond legitimate import-export business. And slowly, gradually, I started seeing patterns, seeing shipments that were valued strangely, seeing payments that did not match invoices, seeing a shadow business running parallel to the legitimate one. I also started researching the Moretti family more thoroughly, not just accepting what I knew from being married to Jason, but actually investigating using public records, using newspaper archives, using court documents to understand who these people were, what they were accused of, what crimes they were known to commit, and what I found terrified me. The Moretti family was connected to dozens of unsolved murders, to disappeared witnesses, to people who testified against them and then vanished, and I understood that I was married into a family that did not just commit crimes, they eliminated anyone who threatened them, anyone who knew too much, anyone who could not be controlled. I started having panic attacks, real physical panic attacks where I could not breathe, where my heart raced, where I felt like I was dying. Usually in the middle of the day when I was alone in our house, when I was surrounded by evidence of my father's crimes and my husband's lies, when I understood how much danger I was in, how trapped I was, how few options I had, and I would sit on the floor of my father's old office, the office I had converted into a storage room, and I would try to breathe, would try to calm down, would try to think strategically instead of emotionally. I called my best friend Mercy Anderson, the only person I trusted completely, told her I needed to talk. Met her for coffee at a place far from our neighborhood, far from anywhere Jason might see us, and I told her everything, told her about the conversation I had overheard, told her about my father's alleged theft, told her that I thought my marriage was based on lies, and Mercy, who was a therapist, who understood trauma and manipulation, listened without judgment and then said, "Charlotte, you need to protect yourself. You need to document everything. You need to build an exit strategy. Because if what you are telling me is true, if Jason married you to find stolen money, you are not safe. You are an asset to be used. And the moment you stop being useful, you become a liability." "I know," I said. "I know I am not safe. I know I need to leave, but Mercy, I love him. I love Jason, and that makes this so much harder. Because part of me wants to believe that his feelings for me are real, that he has changed, that maybe we could work through this. And another part of me knows that is fantasy, knows that I am in danger, knows that love is not enough when the foundation is this broken." "Love is not enough," Mercy confirmed. "Love is necessary but not sufficient. You also need honesty. You need safety. You need to be with someone who sees you as a person, not as a means to an end. And Charlotte, from what you have told me, Jason might love you now, but he started by using you. And that is very hard to come back from. That is a level of betrayal that most relationships cannot survive." I went home from that coffee with Mercy feeling more alone than I had ever felt, feeling like I was the only person who could save myself, feeling the weight of decisions that would determine whether I lived or died, whether I escaped or became another person who disappeared, whether I survived this or became a cautionary tale that other women whispered about but never fully understood. I found the first clue 3 days later, found a safe deposit box key in one of my father's old file boxes, a key I had never seen before, a key that was not labeled, not documented, not part of any inventory of his estate, just a small silver key hidden in a manila envelope marked personal, and I held that key, held it in my shaking hands, held it knowing that this small piece of metal might be the key to everything, might contain answers, might contain danger, might contain my salvation or my destruction. I researched which bank the key belonged to based on the markings, found it was a small private bank downtown, the kind that catered to wealthy clients who valued discretion, and I went to that bank. I presented the key and my identification as Harrison Chen's daughter, and they gave me access to a box I did not know existed, led me to a private viewing room, left me alone with whatever my father had hidden. Inside the box was a notebook, handwritten, my father's handwriting that I knew so well, that I had seen on birthday cards and business documents and notes left on the kitchen counter, and seeing it now, seeing his careful script documenting crimes, documenting theft, documenting betrayal, I felt something break inside me, felt the image I had of my father shatter completely, felt grief and anger and betrayal all mixed together in a way I did not know how to process. I read the notebook sitting in that bank vault, read pages and pages of transactions, dates, amounts, names, all organized, all documented, all proving exactly what Jason had said, that my father had been skimming money from the Moretti family, that he had been moving it through complex networks of accounts, that over 10 years he had stolen $12 million, and with each page I read, with each transaction I saw documented, I felt like I was losing my father all over again, was mourning him all over again, was understanding that the man I thought I knew was largely fiction. But in the back of the notebook in my father's careful script was a note addressed to me, and I read it through tears, through anger, through grief that was fresh and raw and overwhelming. "Charlotte," my father had written, "if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have found what I hoped you would never need to find. I am sorry. I am so sorry that I have left you with this burden. I am sorry I was not honest with you. I am sorry I built our comfortable life on money stolen from dangerous people. I am sorry for all of it. But I need you to know the truth. I need you to understand why I did what I did. I stole from the Moretti family because they are evil. My father's note continued, because they hurt people, because they traffic in human suffering, because I could not be part of their operations, could not facilitate their crimes, could not use my business to help them move drugs and weapons and all the terrible things they profit from, without doing something to undermine them, without taking something back, without making them pay in some small way for the damage they do to the world. So I skimmed, I took a little here and a little there. Amounts small enough that they would not notice immediately, would not trace back to me right away. And I did it for years, and I accumulated millions. And I told myself I was doing something right, something good, taking blood money and converting it into something that could give you a better life, a life away from all of this, a life where you would never have to know where the money came from. I was going to tell you, my father wrote, was going to explain everything once I had enough, once I had a plan to disappear, to take you somewhere the Moretti family could never find us, somewhere we could start over with new names, new lives, new everything. But I got sick before I could execute that plan. My heart failed before I could get us out, and now this money, this blood money, is yours, is your inheritance, is your way out if you ever need it. The account information is encoded in this notebook, my father's note continued. The password is your mother's maiden name plus the year we were married. Use it wisely, use it carefully, and Charlotte. If the Moretti family ever comes looking, if they ever connect you to what I did, if they ever figure out that you have access to this money, run. Do not hesitate. Do not try to negotiate. Do not trust anyone. Just take the money and disappear. Because these are not people who forgive. These are not people who show mercy. These are people who will use you and then eliminate you. And I cannot protect you from beyond the grave. So you have to protect yourself. And there was one more thing, one more paragraph at the end of the note that made me understand how much my father had loved me, how much he had tried to protect me, how much he had sacrificed. If you are reading this and you are married, my father wrote, if you have built a life with someone, be very careful, be very suspicious, because the Moretti family is patient, is strategic, is willing to wait years to recover what they lost. And Charlotte, if someone came into your life after I died, if someone pursued you, if someone made you fall in love with them, ask yourself why. Ask yourself if it might be about this money. Ask yourself if you are being used. Because my greatest fear, my deepest terror, is that they will use you, will manipulate you, will make you love them, and then destroy you. And I have tried to prevent that, have tried to hide you, have tried to make sure you are safe, but I cannot predict everything, cannot control everything. So please, please be careful. Please protect yourself. Please do not trust anyone who seems too good to be true. I sat in that bank vault holding my father's notebook, holding his warning, holding proof that he had seen this coming, had anticipated that the Moretti family might use me, might marry me to someone, might try to recover their money through me. And he had tried to warn me, had tried to protect me even from beyond the grave, and I felt simultaneously loved and betrayed, felt grateful for his warning and angry that he put me in this position, felt everything at once in a way that was overwhelming, paralyzing, devastating. But I could not afford to be paralyzed, could not afford to fall apart, so I pulled myself together. I photographed every page of the notebook, I uploaded the photos to secure cloud storage, I made copies, I made sure this evidence existed in multiple locations, and then I took the notebook, I left the bank, and I went home to my husband, to the man my father had warned me about, to the man who had done exactly what my father feared, and I had to decide, had to choose, had to figure out what to do with this information, with this proof, with this knowledge that changed everything. I sat in that bank vault holding my father's notebook, holding proof that everything Jason had told Terry was true, that my father had stolen $12 million, that I did have access to it, that I was exactly what the Moretti family suspected I was, someone who knew where the money was, someone who could access it, someone who was worth monitoring, worth marrying, worth lying to for 3 years. But I was also someone they had underestimated, someone they thought was innocent and naive, someone they thought would never discover the truth, and that underestimation, that dismissal of me as too simple to be a threat. That was their mistake, because now I knew everything, knew what my father did, knew what Jason was doing, knew what I was really dealing with, and I could make informed choices, strategic choices, choices that would protect me from people who saw me as a means to an end. I did not tell Jason what I found, did not reveal that I had discovered the notebook, did not let him know that I now had access to the $12 million his family was looking for. I just continued playing my role, continued being Charlotte, the innocent wife, Charlotte who knew nothing, Charlotte who was easy to deceive, and I watched Jason, watched the guilt eat at him, watched him try harder to be a good husband, watched him overcompensate with affection and attention and love that was real but was also built on a foundation of lies, and I accepted it all while planning my next move. The weeks that followed finding my father's notebook were the hardest of my life. Harder than when my father died, harder than any previous grief or pain, because I was living a performance, was being someone I was not, was pretending ignorance while I was actually strategizing, planning, preparing for a confrontation that would either save me or destroy me. And the pressure of that performance, the weight of keeping everything inside, the stress of maintaining the facade, it was crushing, was overwhelming, was making me physically sick. I lost weight, could not eat without feeling nauseous, could not sleep more than a few hours even when I was exhausted, could not concentrate on anything except the constant calculation of what Jason knew, what he suspected, what he was planning, and how I could stay ahead of him, stay safe, stay alive. I started documenting everything, started recording conversations when Jason thought I was asleep, started photographing documents when he left them in his study, started building a case, building evidence, building proof of what the Moretti family had done, what they were still doing, what they were planning, and I did it systematically, professionally, with the kind of attention to detail that my father had taught me when I worked in his business before he died, when he was teaching me to be careful, to be thorough, to always have documentation. I recorded Jason talking to Terry about the search, about how he was running out of places to look, about how his father was getting impatient, was demanding results, was starting to question whether Jason was capable of completing the assignment, and I heard the stress in Jason's voice, heard him defending himself, heard him lying about progress he had not made, and I understood that Jason was feeling pressure from both sides, pressure from his family to find the money, pressure from his conscience to stop lying to me, and that pressure, that conflict, was tearing him apart, and part of me felt sorry for him even though he had brought this on himself. I also started moving money, accessed the accounts my father had left me using the information from the notebook, and I started transferring funds, small amounts at first, tens of thousands here and there, moving it into new accounts under different names, creating a web of financial structures that would be hard to trace, hard to seize, hard to use against me, and I did it with the help of Alexis Morrison. A lawyer was hired in secret, a woman who specialized in asset protection and who asked minimal questions about why I needed to hide money from my husband, who just said, "Whatever you are protecting yourself from, make sure you do it thoroughly, make sure you leave no traces, make sure you create enough layers that even if someone finds one account, they cannot find them all." Over the course of 3 months, I moved all $12 million, moved it through dozens of accounts, through multiple countries, through structures so complex that even I needed a diagram to track where everything was, but it was safe, was protected, was impossible for the Moretti family to access even if they figured out I had it, and that safety, that knowledge that the money was beyond their reach, gave me power, gave me confidence, gave me the ability to make choices based on what I wanted, rather than what I was afraid of. I also started preparing for the possibility of disappearing, researched how to create new identities, how to get documents, how to establish lives in foreign countries, and I did it quietly, carefully, using encrypted communications, using cash payments, using every precaution to make sure Jason did not know, did not suspect, did not realize that his sleeping wife was actually building an elaborate escape plan that would allow her to vanish completely if things went wrong. 3 months after I found my father's notebook, 3 months of playing the devoted wife while building my exit strategy, 3 months of watching Jason struggle with guilt while continuing to lie to me, I decided it was time to test him, time to see if he would choose me over his family, time to create a situation where his real loyalty would be revealed, because I needed to know, needed to understand if the love he claimed to feel was stronger than the obligation he felt to his father, if he was capable of choosing me, really choosing me, when it mattered most. I created an opportunity, staged a situation where Jason would overhear me talking to Mercy on the phone, talking about finding some old documents of my father's, talking about discovering a bank account I did not know existed, talking about maybe there being more money than I thought, and I made sure Jason could hear, made sure he was listening, made sure he would report back to his family what he had learned. And then I waited to see what he would do, waited to see if he would tell his father immediately, would try to access the account himself, would confront me, would do something that would reveal his real priorities. Jason confronted me that evening, came to me with concern in his eyes, with worry in his voice, with the performance of caring husband, and he said, "Charlotte, I overheard you talking to Mercy, and I am worried. I am worried about you finding old accounts, about you dealing with your father's estate, about you having to manage things alone, and I want to help. I want to be there for you. I want to make sure you are protected." And as he said it, as he performed concern, I watched his eyes, watched for the calculation, watched for the signs that he was gathering information to report to his father, and I saw it, saw the moment where he catalogued what I said, filed it away, prepared to share it, and I knew he was still choosing his family, was still prioritizing his assignment, was still seeing me as a means to an end. But then something shifted, something in Jason's expression changed, and he said, "But Charlotte, I do not actually want to help with the accounts. I want to help with you. I want to help with whatever you are carrying, whatever burden your father left you, whatever you are dealing with alone, and I do not care about the money. I care about you, and I know I have not always shown that. I know I have been absent, I have been distant, but I want you to know that I am here. I am choosing to be here. I am choosing you." I looked at my husband, at this man who was saying the right words but whose actions told a different story, and I made a decision. I decided to push harder, to test further, to see if he would choose me when the cost was real, when the sacrifice was significant, when choosing me meant betraying his family in ways that could not be undone. 3 months after I started testing Jason, 3 months of escalating situations, 3 months of watching him claim to choose me while still reporting to his family, I forced the issue. I created a crisis. I told Jason that I knew he had married me on orders. I knew he was searching for my father's money. I knew everything, and I needed him to choose, needed him to decide, needed him to prove that his love was real by making it real, by choosing me over the family in a way that could not be hidden, could not be undone, could not be explained away. "Charlotte," Jason said, his voice breaking, his face pale, "I can explain. I can tell you everything. I can make you understand why I did what I did. And yes, it started as an assignment. Yes, my father ordered me to marry you. Yes, I was searching for the money. But Charlotte, I fell in love with you, really fell in love with you. And I do not know how to reconcile that with what I am, with what I was supposed to do, with the fact that my family is never going to stop looking, is never going to accept that the money is gone, is never going to let this go." "Then you have to choose," I said. "You have to decide right now, in this moment, whether you are Jason Moretti, loyal to your family, or whether you are Jason, my husband, loyal to me, and you cannot be both. Those identities are incompatible. And Jason, I need you to understand what I am asking. I am asking you to betray your family, to lie to your father, to protect me from people who will hurt me if they think I am keeping something from them. And if you cannot do that, if you cannot choose me completely, then I need to leave. I need to disappear. I need to protect myself because you will not." "I choose you," Jason said immediately, without hesitation. "I choose you over my family. I choose you over the money. I choose you over everything I had before I met you. And Charlotte, I will prove it. I will do whatever you need me to do. I will lie to my father. I will leave the family. I will help you disappear if that is what it takes to keep you safe. Just please give me a chance to make this right, to be the man you deserve, to build something honest out of the lies I started with." I stared at my husband, at this man who had just confirmed everything I already knew, who had just admitted to 3 years of deception, who was now asking me to understand, to forgive, to accept that his love was real, even though our entire relationship was built on manipulation. And I made a choice. I chose to reveal some of what I knew while keeping the rest hidden, chose to test Jason, chose to see if he would choose me over his family when it really mattered. "I know about the money," I said, and I watched Jason's face change, watched shock replace guilt, watched him realize that I was not the innocent victim he thought I was. I found my father's notebook. I found the account information. I have access to the $12 million your family is looking for, and I have been sitting on this information for 3 months, watching you, listening to you, deciding what to do. And Jason, I need you to understand something. I am not giving that money to your family. That money is mine. My father stole it, but he stole it for me. He stole it to protect me from people like your family, and I am keeping it." "You knew," Jason said, and his voice was quiet, shocked. "You knew and you did not tell me. You knew for 3 months and you let me keep lying to you. You let me keep searching for something you had already found. I let you reveal who you really are," I corrected. "I let you show me what you would choose when forced to decide between me and your family. And Jason, you chose your family, you kept lying, you kept searching. You kept playing the role your father assigned even after you claimed to love me. So now I am choosing myself. I am choosing my safety. I am choosing to keep the money and protect myself from people who married me under false pretenses." "I choose you," Jason said desperately. "I choose you over my family. I choose you over the money. I choose you over everything. And I will prove it. I will tell my father you do not have the money. I will tell him I searched and found nothing. I will protect you from whatever consequences that brings." "You are willing to lie to your father for me?" I asked. "You are willing to betray the family to protect me? You are willing to face whatever Kenny Moretti does to people who fail him?" "Yes," Jason said without hesitation. "Yes to all of it, because Charlotte, I love you. And I am sorry for how this started. I am sorry I lied to you. I am sorry I was not honest from the beginning. But I am being honest now. I am choosing you now. And if that means leaving the family, if that means facing my father's anger, if that means we have to disappear, then that is what we will do, together." I looked at my husband, at this man who had lied to me for 3 years but who was now offering to sacrifice everything for me. And I made another choice. I chose to test him further, chose to see if his commitment was real, chose to create a situation where he would have to prove his loyalty was to me and not to the family that raised him. "Then help me," I said. "Help me move the money somewhere your family cannot access it. Help me create identities we can use if we need to run. Help me build an exit strategy that protects both of us from what your father might do when he realizes you have been lying to him. And if you do that, if you prove that you choose me over them, then maybe I can forgive the lies. Maybe I can believe that your love is real. Maybe we can build something honest on the ruins of what you destroyed." Jason agreed immediately, agreed without hesitation. And over the next 6 months we worked together, moved the $12 million through complex channels, created new identities, purchased property in different countries under different names, built a complete exit strategy that would allow us to disappear if we needed to. And through all of it I watched Jason, watched him choose me over and over, watched him lie to his father, watched him protect me from suspicion, watched him become the partner I needed instead of the spy he had been. But I also did something else, something Jason did not know about. I documented everything. Every crime the Moretti family committed, every illegal transaction, every act of violence, every piece of evidence that could bring them down. And I stored it in secure locations, made copies, created a dead man switch that would release everything to federal authorities if anything happened to me. Because I understood that my safety depended on being too dangerous to eliminate, on being someone whose death would cause more problems than it solved. Kenny Moretti figured it out 8 months after Jason's confession, figured out that Jason was lying to him, figured out that I had the money, figured out that his son had betrayed the family, and he called a meeting, demanded Jason come alone, and I knew this was the moment of truth, knew that what happened at that meeting would determine everything, would determine whether Jason really chose me, whether his loyalty had truly shifted, whether love was strong enough to override blood. Jason went to that meeting and I waited in our home with my phone in my hand, with my escape plan ready, with my finger hovering over the button that would release all the evidence I had gathered, and I waited, and I prayed, and I hoped that the man I loved would prove worthy of that love. Jason came home 3 hours later, his face pale, his hands shaking, his eyes full of something that looked like grief, and he said, I told my father everything. I told him I married you on orders, but that I fell in love with you. I told him you have the money, but that I am not going to help him get it. I told him I choose you over the family. And Charlotte, he disowned me. He said I am dead to him. He said I am no longer a Moretti. He said if he ever sees me again, he will end me for betrayal. And you still chose me, I said. You chose me knowing the consequences. You chose me knowing what you would lose. I chose you, Jason confirmed, because you are worth more than the family. Because you are worth more than the money. Because you are worth more than the life I had before I met you. And Charlotte, I am sorry. I am so sorry for how this started, but I am grateful for where we are now. Grateful that you are giving me a chance to prove I am more than what I was, more than the man who married you under false pretenses. I looked at my husband, this man who had lied to me but was now telling the truth, this man who had used me but was now choosing me, this man who had betrayed me but was now being loyal, and I made a final choice. I chose to forgive, chose to build something new on the foundation of honesty we had finally created, chose to believe that people can change, that love can survive deception, that sometimes the worst beginnings can lead to honest endings if both people are willing to do the work. We disappeared 3 weeks later, used the identities we had created, moved to a small town in Europe where the Moretti family would never find us, and we built a new life, a life based on truth, a life where we both knew exactly who we were and what we had survived together, and it was good, it was honest, it was worth all the pain it took to get there. But I kept the evidence, kept the documentation, kept the dead man's switch active, because I understood that safety is not something you achieve once and then forget about. Safety is something you maintain, something you protect, something you guard every single day. And my safety, our safety, depended on the Moretti family believing that hurting us would cost them more than leaving us alone. Jason knows about the evidence now, knows that I have been documenting his family's crimes, knows that I have leverage that protects us both, and instead of being angry, instead of feeling betrayed, he said thank you. He said you were smarter than all of us. He said you protected yourself when no one else would, and that is the mark of someone who deserves to survive, someone who refuses to be a victim, someone who takes their safety into their own hands. Where are you watching from? What do you think about Charlotte's choice? Was she right to forgive Jason? Was she right to build a life with someone who started as her enemy? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe. Subscribe and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Because this story, this complicated story about deception and love and survival, it matters because it shows that nothing is simple, that people contain multitudes, that someone can be both your enemy and your partner, that lies can lead to truth if both people are willing to be honest eventually, that love is not enough but love plus honesty, love plus choice, love plus commitment to change, that might be enough, that might be worth fighting for. Jason thought I was asleep, thought I would never hear his confession, thought his secret was safe, and that assumption was his mistake, because I was awake, I was listening, I was learning, and when I discovered the truth about my father, about the money, about the reason for our marriage, I did not fall apart, I did not become a victim, I became strategic, became dangerous, became someone who could not be dismissed or underestimated or eliminated, and that transformation, that choice to protect myself, that decision to be smarter than the people trying to use me, that is what saved my life. Subscribe and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. This story is far from over, because somewhere in a small European town, Charlotte and Jason are building a life that is honest, that is real, that is based on choices they both made with full knowledge of the costs, and that life, that hard-won, complicated life, is worth more than anything either of them had before, because it is true, because it is chosen, because it is protected by someone who refuses to be anyone's victim ever again.